I discovered a box of letters my grandmother wrote before she passed, and what they revealed about her life left me speechless. I'm 28, and my grandmother Eleanor passed away last year. She was the kind of woman you could never forget. Fiercely independent, sharp as a tack, and always full of love, even if her words were sometimes blunt. Losing her felt like the end of an era for our family. She had been the glue that held us together through countless holidays, birthdays, and rough patches. After her funeral, my mom and I spent a week cleaning out her house. It was painful, but also comforting, like spending one last moment in her world. Her house had been her sanctuary, filled with antiques, photographs, and the smell of lavender from her favorite candles. One afternoon, while sorting through boxes in the attic, I stumbled across a small wooden chest that was tucked behind some old photo albums. It wasn't fancy, just a simple, weathered box with a brass latch. I almost didn't open it, thinking it was probably filled with old receipts or random knickknacks, but something about it called to me. When I lifted the lid, I was stunned to find it was filled with letters. Dozens of them, all neatly folded and tied together with a faded blue ribbon. Each envelope had a date written on it in my grandmother's elegant handwriting. The earliest one was from 1948, and the most recent was from just a few months before her death. I brought the box downstairs to show my mom. She was just as surprised as I was. "I had no idea she kept these," she said, her voice soft with wonder. "She never mentioned anything like this to me." We debated whether we should read them. Part of me felt like it was an invasion of her privacy, but another part of me couldn't resist. My grandmother had always been a private person, and these letters felt like a window into a side of her life I had never known. That night, I sat down with the box in my lap and opened the first letter. The first one was addressed to my dearest Eleanor, dated August 1948. It was from a man named Henry. My grandmother had never mentioned anyone named Henry before, and his words were filled with affection and longing. He described meeting her at a local dance and how he couldn't stop thinking about her since that night. "I knew from the moment I saw you in that red dress that you were someone special," the letter read. "I hope you'll agree to see me again soon. Until then, you'll be in my thoughts every moment of every day." I was floored. My grandmother had always talked about how she met my grandfather Charles in 1950. She made it sound like he was her one and only love. But here was this letter from another man, 2 years earlier. Who was Henry? I couldn't stop myself from reading the next letter, and then the next. Over the course of a dozen or so letters, I pieced together the story of their relationship. Henry was a soldier stationed in her hometown after the war. They fell deeply in love, but their relationship was cut short when he was reassigned to a base across the country. Her letters to him were also in the box, though many were marked "Return to Sender." She poured her heart into those letters, writing about how much she missed him and how she hoped they could find a way to be together again. But by 1949, the letters stopped. The last one was from Henry, saying he couldn't ask her to wait for him any longer. He didn't know when or if he'd be able to return, and he didn't want to hold her back. The next set of letters was from my grandfather, Charles. They began in 1950, just a few months after Henry's last letter. Charles's letters were sweet but more reserved than Henry's. He was kind and steady, the kind of man who didn't wear his heart on his sleeve, but showed his love through actions. "Eleanor, I can't promise you the world," one letter read, "but I can promise to stand by your side, no matter what. If you'll have me, I'll do everything I can to make you happy." Their correspondence continued until 1952, the year they got married. From what I could tell, she found peace and stability with Charles. Their letters didn't have the fiery passion of her exchanges with Henry, but they were filled with warmth and trust. Reading those letters, I could see why she chose my grandfather. He wasn't the grand romance she had with Henry, but he was reliable and devoted. He was exactly what she needed at that point in her life. As I dug deeper into the box, the letters became more personal and introspective. She wrote letters to herself during pivotal moments in her life, when my mom was born, when she and Charles struggled to keep their small business afloat, and when she lost him to cancer in 1987. One letter, dated 2 weeks after his death, broke my heart. "Charles, I don't know how to do this without you. You were my anchor, my compass. I always thought I'd have more time with you, but now I'm adrift. I miss you more than words can say, but I promise to keep going, for you, for our family. You always said I was stronger than I realized. I hope you're right." Her grief was palpable, but so was her determination. She poured herself into her family after his death, becoming the matriarch we all relied on. The final letters were the hardest to read. They were addressed to me, my mom, and my siblings. She wrote them in the last months of her life, knowing her time was running out. "Lila," she wrote in my letter, "you've always had a curious mind and a big heart. Don't let the world make you hard. Keep asking questions, keep seeking beauty, and don't be afraid to take risks. Life is too short to live in fear. Her words felt like a hug from beyond the grave. By the time I finished reading, it was nearly dawn. The box of letters had given me a glimpse into a side of my grandmother I had never known. A young woman with dreams and heartbreaks, a devoted wife and mother, and a resilient soul who faced life's challenges with grace. She wasn't just the woman who baked cookies for us on Christmas, or told us to sit up straight at the dinner table. She was so much more. The letters also made me realize how little I had really known about her life before she became Grandma. She had lived, loved, and lost in ways I could only begin to understand. Now, whenever I think of her, I don't just see the strong, loving matriarch who held our family together. I see Eleanor, the woman, the dreamer, the survivor. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's the importance of asking questions while you still have the chance. Don't wait until it's too late to learn your loved one's stories. You never know what you might discover. And to my grandmother, wherever you are, thank you for your love, your strength, and the legacy you've left behind. I'll cherish it forever.